Welcome to the Cinematic Trail, an AI-generated deep dive conversation into the ever-evolving world of cinematography. From exposure theory to lens choices, from lighting philosophy to creative workflows, we explore the craft, the gear, and the stories behind the frame, one trail marker at a time. Want to take your cinematography to the next level? Explore our online courses and learn more at cinematic.com. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for weekly insights and inspiration. Let's begin the journey.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Let's dive right in. We all get the power of music in movies, right? I mean, how it just grabs you, tells you how to feel almost instantly.
Absolutely. But there's this other layer. It's incredibly powerful, but often, kind of hidden. Intentional sound design.
Exactly. It's not the score, it's, well, everything else.
Pretty much. That subtle scrape of a chair, maybe a specific door creak, distant thunder, or even just the sound a character's backpack makes. Little things.
But they're not just little things, are they? They're chosen, deliberate, designed to pull you in deeper.
That's the key. Deliberate choices. And that's really what we're diving into today. We've been digging into some great insights from Chris Tennard with Cinematic, looking at articles and a video discussion he put out.
And the main idea, the core concept from Chris, sound design isn't just something you tack on at the end.
No, not at all. When you approach it intentionally right from the beginning, it becomes, well, foundational. It works with the visuals, with the dialogue.
To create something more immersive, more sensory.
Precisely. It stops just supporting the picture and starts actively helping to tell the story, shaping how you, the audience, feel.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this, Chris gives this very good example, a school fundraising film project.
Yeah, that's a great case study.
So our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack how they handled sound on that specific film, look at the techniques they used.
And importantly, why this stuff matters to you. Whether you make things yourself or just love understanding how great stories are put together.
Right. So this school film, the client wanted to capture, what was it? The real daily rhythm, the energy of the place.
Exactly. They wanted the viewer to feel like they were actually there, experiencing a day on campus.
And what really jumps out from what Chris is saying is how early they thought about sound, like really early.
Yeah, that's crucial. They decided sound was foundational right from the very first conversation, way before cameras rolled.
Which is pretty unusual.
Very different. And the vision didn't even start with, the hustle and bustle of the school day. It actually began with silence. Picturing the campus really early, before sunrise, quiet, just the first birds, maybe the low hum of the city, still mostly asleep.
So that quietness was a deliberate choice, not just, oh, it happens to be quiet then.
Absolutely deliberate. It wasn't just a visual idea, let's show the sunrise. The sound was planned as this essential starting point to set a tone, create a contrast with the energy that was coming later.
Ah, I see. Building the audio world literally from almost nothing, and then layering in the sounds of the day starting. First cars, footsteps.
Sneakers squeaking in the gym.
Yeah.
Every single sound was a conscious choice, like painting with sound, really.
Which I guess leads us to a really key point Chris hammers home. The value of recording your own sounds, not just grabbing stuff from a library.
Right. That came up quite a bit.
But I mean, those sound libraries are huge, aren't they? Don't they have everything? Isn't it way faster?
Well, yes and no. Chris acknowledged that stock sounds are fine for some things. Generic background burrs, maybe a standard school bell. They use some of those.
Okay.
But where they hit a wall was matching sounds to specific things happening on screen. The timing, the speed, the exact feel of a stock sound.
Yeah.
It rarely lines up perfectly with your action, your visual.
Ah, so even if it's close, a tiny mismatch can kind of break the immersion.
Exactly that. If the sound of, say, a ball hitting a bat is just a fraction of a second off from the visual, or a car brake sound doesn't quite match the car's movement.
Your brain notices something's not quite right, even if you can't put your finger on it.
Precisely. It creates this subtle disconnect. Feels off.
Okay, so the big takeaway here for anyone creating something is control matters a lot.
Control is king, yeah. Recording your own sounds or custom designing them for specific actions gives you that total control. You can match the energy, the rhythm of the visual perfectly.
It lets you shape the feeling intentionally, using sound, not just settling for close enough.
Exactly. It's about designing the sound with the same precision you use for your visuals. Intention, not compromise.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So what were some of the main techniques they actually used to get that level of intention?
Well, one really fundamental technique discussed is capturing isolated sounds,
Isolated, meaning,
getting the microphone really, really close to the source, sometimes just inches away. The goal is to record only the sound you want and cut out as much background ambient noise as possible.
like that sprinkler example you mentioned. That was a good one.
Yeah, perfect illustration. They needed the sound of sprinklers for that quiet early morning scene. But filming on campus, the shot was wide, so the mic had to be far away out of the frame.
And it picked up everything else. City noise, traffic.
Yep, buried the subtle sprinkler sound in just a load of general ambient noise. Not clean enough.
So they couldn't get what they needed right there. What did they do?
They actually restaged the sound completely. Put the mic inches from the spray, from the valve.
Ah, so they could get a really clean, crisp recording?
Exactly. And crucially, it gave them control over not just the sound itself, but its duration, its volume, and even its end. Chris pointed out that the sound of the sprinkler shutting off became a really important storytelling cue.
Marking a transition.
Yeah, marking that shift from the quiet dawn to the campus starting to wake up.
Wow. That's a lot of effort for a sprinkler sound. But I get it. And I bet recording sounds separately, like that causes headaches in the edit, right? Trying to sync everything up.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge logistical challenge. Because the audio wasn't recorded with the video, even using timecode sync, lining it all up perfectly takes meticulous organization.
So how did they manage that?
Well, the audio engineer on this project had a pretty smart workaround. He recorded voice notes right after each sound take.
Just talking into the microphone.
Yep. Like, okay, this is the sound of a crayon on paper, take 2. Or this is the heavy backpack rustle, take 1. Things like that.
Ah, like labeling the recordings immediately.
Exactly. And imagine, Chris said there was something like 227 different audio clips for this relatively short film.
Wow.
So those voice notes were absolutely vital for the editor later on to quickly find the exact sound they needed for a specific visual moment.
That's a really practical tip, actually. Okay, so isolated sounds, meticulous organization. What else?
Another key technique they talked about for realism was matching the microphone movement to the camera movement.
Okay, what does that mean? Like physically moving the mic?
Yes. If the camera is, say, panning across a room or tracking alongside someone walking, a sound that just stays static can feel, well, fake, disconnected. It doesn't seem like it's part of the same physical space.
Right.
So by mimicking the camera's movement, the audio feels like it's evolving naturally with the visual frame.
Ah, okay, so if the camera pans towards someone off-screen who's talking, their voice would sort of naturally seem to get louder or clearer as they enter the frame.
Exactly. Or, the sound of a rolling tire gets closer as the camera tracks a car.
Yeah.
It just adds this layer of spatial realism, grounding you in the scene.
Okay, so you've got these carefully recorded, isolated sounds. You've timed them perfectly, maybe even moved them to match the camera. How do you make it all sound, real together, not just a collection of individual noises?
Yeah, that's where layering comes in.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crucial. Because even a single perfectly recorded sound can sometimes feel a bit stark or artificial on its own. Chris had this great analogy. It's like mixing paint. One pure color can be jarring, but when you blend multiple sounds together.
Like the main action sound, plus some background noise, maybe some atmosphere.
Exactly. The primary action, relevant ambient sounds, maybe some subtle atmospheric tones, even voices. You blend them carefully, and the result is something much smoother, more organic, more immersive.
So the goal isn't necessarily to make every single sound stand out and be noticed?
Often, no. The goal of really effective sound layering is frequently for the audience not to consciously pick out every element. Instead, it's the cumulative effect, the overall texture that draws them deeper, makes them feel it on a more visceral level.
So the big idea with layering is audio should be felt, maybe more than it's consciously heard.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. Creating believable soundscapes that enhance the emotional feel of the scene.
Chris gives this very good example of layering voices in this school film.
Oh, yeah. That was fascinating. They layered in these really brief snippets of actual voices, like a quick good morning down a hallway, maybe hello team, in a classroom, even just a word or phrase in a foreign language being taught.
So not dialogue carrying the plot, but more like background texture.
Exactly. Micro moments woven into the soundscape.
And how did that contribute? What did those tiny bits of voice add?
Well, they added this incredible layer of authenticity, warmth. They helped reinforce the school's actual culture, its values, the teaching methods.
It makes sense.
Hearing those real brief interactions or a teacher speaking another language. It became a subtle form of storytelling in itself. It gave context, a feeling that maybe the visuals alone couldn't fully capture. It just helps complete the picture of that environment.
Okay. So all these techniques, recording your own sounds, isolating them, moving with the camera, layering everything together. What's the payoff? What's the ultimate impact on the viewer? Why go through all that effort?
The core takeaway really boiled down to emotional engagement. By activating more senses, especially hearing, with this kind of deliberate care, you just pull the audience in so much deeper.
It makes you feel like you're inside the story, more than just watching it.
Exactly that. You're not just observing the world on screen. You feel more like you're experiencing it from within that world.
And that leads to what? People connecting more? Remembering it better?
Yeah, all of that. That feeling of presence creates a much deeper investment. They remember the film more vividly. They're probably more likely to talk about it, share it, maybe even rewatch it, just to recapture that feeling.
And the client for this school project actually noticed this.
Oh, yeah. That was maybe the best proof it worked. Chris mentioned the client specifically commented on noticing new layers of sound when they watched it again.
Really?
Yeah, they apparently revisited the film multiple times just, and I quote, to discover new details in the audio.
Wow. That says a lot about the richness they built in. It wasn't just surface level.
Exactly. It shows the lasting impact. A really well-crafted, intentional soundscape adds depth and meaning that can keep revealing itself.
So looking back at everything, the conclusion feels, well, pretty definitive. Sound design isn't just technical polish or an optional extra.
No, it's presented as a fundamental artistic decision. Just as important to the storytelling as, the cinematography or the script itself.
It needs that same level of planning, the same precision, the same creativity.
Absolutely. When you treat it that way, sound stops being just background noise. It kind of becomes its own character, guiding the audience, setting the mood, defining how they actually experience the whole story.
It doesn't just make the story sound better, it fundamentally changes how you feel the story.
It really elevates watching into, feeling, experiencing.
So here's something to chew on, drawing right from these ideas we've discussed. If you started thinking about sound design as like a character in your next project, what kind of voice would it have? How could you use sound right from the beginning to tell parts of the story or deepen it? What stories could you maybe tell only through sound?
That's a wrap for this episode. Thanks for the great conversation.
Yeah, really great insights today. Thanks for tuning in and spending some time with us.
Thank you for joining us on the Cinematic Trail. We hope today's journey sparked new ideas and sharpened your eye behind the lens. Until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and as always, happy filming.